You are listening to Practical and Woo by Mindset and Manifest. My name is Eden, and I invite you to embark on a journey with me to explore the practical and spiritual edges of the unknown for the purpose of allowing you to embody and empower yourself uniquely as you are and to intentionally create and live a life of freedom and fulfillment. Each week, I am going to discuss topics such as energetics, reality creation, manifestation, astrology, tarot, and more to help empower you to live beyond perceived limitations and to practically design your life so it feels like absolute magic every step of the way. Let's dive in. Well, hello, brilliant soul. I made a vocabulary mistake on the podcast episode last week. Instead of saying condemnation, I said condensation, which most definitely is not the same thing. My brain thought I was saying condescending, and I didn't catch it until yesterday. Now I have two choices. To try to erase this, pretending it never happened, which, if I'm being completely honest with you, is the choice that my perfectionist self feels tempted to do. Or I can get inspired and create an episode around mistake making and being human, which feels more aligned with the soul of this podcast, and so I choose the latter. A fundamental truth about what it means to be human is that mistake making is part of the game, the learning process, and the evolution. The places and spaces where you tried your best but still hurt someone's feelings, where you broke a promise that you swore you'd keep, where you reacted outlandishly or threw a fit, where you dropped the proverbial ball, where you made a mess, either physically or metaphorically. And the mastery of being human is learning how to, instead of spiraling into shame or trying to patch up mistakes with perfection, you allow yourself and your mistakes to be evidence that you're living an extraordinary life that is filled with learning, filled with growing, evolving, and becoming. Being human is not about never making mistakes, but about who you become through them. And more than that, the way we meet each other in our humanness is through the compassion we extend to ourselves as well as others when we inevitably make a mistake. I want to invite you to think about your favorite characters in movies, on television, and in books. Think about the type of characters that you allow yourself to root for, the ones you hope will succeed. They're never the ones who have it all together, are they? They're the ones who trip up, who mess things up, who get it wrong but persevere anyway. It's their mistakes that make them relatable, their flaws that make them lovable, their growth that makes you cheer them on. We rarely fall in love with perfection, but we often fall in love with resilience. We fall in love with the ones who try, fail, and try again anyway. And that's because on some deep level, we recognize ourselves within them. That ache of regret, that tension between who you once were and who you're still becoming, that's the bridge of being human. We don't tend to actually admire perfection, but we do connect through imperfection. When you let people see your flaws, when you allow the full texture of your humanity, it creates a kind of intimacy that no amount of perfection can replicate. It says, I see you, I get it, and I've been there too. The other thing that I'd like for us to contemplate is the way that mistakes act as feedback loops, moments of contrast that help you refine your expression of self. A mistake is synonymous to saying, nope, not quite that way, let's try it again. And it's in fact the resistance to learning from our mistakes, rather than the mistakes themselves, that keeps us stuck. Let's think about this practically for a moment. When a child is learning to walk, they fall constantly, and no one calls this failure. Falling when you're learning how to walk is an expected part of the learning curve. But as adults, somewhere along the line, we start to equate mistakes with failure, and we allow ourselves to feel shame towards them. We convince ourselves that we should already know. We think we should already be perfect. Yet, when we allow ourselves to think about it, every mistake that we make is actually data showing us what's working and what's not. Mistakes serve a functional purpose by highlighting the gap between who we think we are and how we're actually showing up. They give us this choice to change and move forward. So instead of asking, why did I mess this up again? Try reframing by asking yourself whether your mistake is showing you about how you can grow. Mistakes are teachers in disguise. They remind you that growth isn't about walking a straight and narrow path, but a spiraling one. You'll meet the same lesson in different forms until your awareness shifts and the change you seek finally takes root. And here's another important element of today's contemplation. How do we hold tender and compassionate space for ours as well as others' mistake making? Because if we truly know and understand that making mistakes is an important and even necessary part about being human, how can we meet ourselves and others in this kind of humanness? It's easy to talk about compassion in theory until someone's mistake affects or offends you, until their learning curve becomes your inconvenience, until someone you love keeps repeating the same pattern and you have to decide where your compassion is versus where your boundary is. This is one of the hardest lessons to learn in life. How do we honor someone's humanity without taking responsibility for it? Learning how to have compassion without coddling and forgiveness without excusing. Learning to love without overfunctioning. Because compassion is not about saying it's fine, but about recognizing the process of someone else while also fully taking care of ourselves. Meeting someone in their mistake making doesn't mean you carry the consequences for them. It means you don't define them by their mistake. You remember that they too are in process, that they too are hopefully learning and growing. And one of the most human things we can do is mess up while trying to love well. And if we can hold each other with compassion in that messiness, we create the possibility for safer spaces to share honestly while also holding each other accountable. Because the more unsafe it feels to make a mistake, the more people tend to hide. And the more people feel like hiding, the less growing we do. Compassion is not indulgence or excuse making for someone else's mistakes or flaws. It can actually be thought of as an accelerator for growth, because there's this quiet alchemy that happens when you can hold space for someone else's humanity without making it your job to fix it or fix them. It's the art and science of learning how to witness without rescuing. So let's say someone in your life makes a mistake that hurts you. It's okay to be honest about the impact. It's okay to have boundaries. And it's also okay to remind yourself that this is a human being in process. The question then becomes, what might they do with it? Are they avoiding accountability, or are they growing through it? Are they doubling down in shame, or are they open to awareness? And as frustrating as this can feel, some lessons take multiple rounds of experience. When we hold the people in our lives accountable with compassion, we give them the chance to meet themselves differently. And whether or not they choose to rise to the occasion is not your job to manage, fix, or change as much as we sometimes want it to be. And so I invite you to remember this. You can honor someone's growth without making excuses for them. You can love someone deeply and still say, this isn't working for me. You can cheer for someone's becoming and still hold them accountable. Because love that has no boundary is not compassion. It's self-erasure. And on the flip side, boundaries that have no compassion become walls instead of bridges. The goal isn't to swing to either extreme. It's to be fluent in both, to say, I see your effort, and this still needs to change. To say, I believe in your growth, and I'm also responsible for my peace. Because every time we try to fix someone else's mistake, we rob them of the ability to learn. And every time we shame someone for their mistake, we rob ourselves of access to compassion we may seek in our moments of need. The next time someone around you makes a mistake or messes up, invite yourself to take a breath and ask yourself, what would compassion look like right now for them and for me? Which actually brings us to another layer of this contemplation, because sometimes the hardest part of this is learning how to extend compassion to yourself. It's so often easier to forgive someone else for being human than it is to forgive yourself. Because when you make a mistake, it feels personal. You know your intentions and you tell yourself that you should have known better. But the truth is, you didn't know until you did. You were doing the best you could in the moment with the tools that you had at that time. And every mistake opens you a portal to know better and subsequently do better in a similar circumstance. That messy, uncomfortable space between before and after is where true evolution lies. So instead of allowing yourself to spiral into self-blame when you make mistakes, give yourself gratitude. Be thankful that you noticed, that you care, and that you're willing to grow. You might try asking yourself, what is this mistake asking me to learn? Or how can I meet myself with compassion right now? Giving ourselves compassion also means a willingness to lay down our perfectionism. Because when you think about it, perfectionism is simply a fear of rejection wearing a polished outfit. It's the belief that if you just manage to do everything right, you'll finally be safe. And if you never make a mistake, no one will be mad at you or leave you behind. You believe that by not giving anyone a reason to criticize you, then you won't get hurt. But this is such a high price to pay for safety, because the more you try to be flawless, the less room there is for true, genuine connection. The more you guard yourself from making mistakes, the more you guard yourself from being seen. And what you end up with is a performance rather than genuine presence. At the same time, when you operate from the illusion of perfection, your energy becomes rigid, disallowing you to be open to receiving the ever-present feedback in your life. This is because perfectionism often causes feedback to feel like failure. You can't apologize freely because it will feel humiliating. And then you can't grow because growth actually requires you to admit that you're not there yet. And then instead, if you allow yourself to remember that mistakes are part of the human curriculum, you can relax into your learning process, growing into your evolution, one step, or I should say one mistake at a time. Being human is an art, and every mistake is an invitation to return to the journey and process of stepping into your best self. Every apology is an opportunity to build trust, and every misstep is a doorway to deeper alignment and deeper understanding. And when we meet each other there, not as perfect people, but as humans trying our best in every moment, the world actually becomes a gentler, more honest place to grow. So cheers to you for being human. Cheers to getting it wrong before you get it right. Cheers to the messy, beautiful, imperfect art of your becoming. Until next time.